Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Rocky Top Insider Diamond Pass here on this Monday night, March 17th, St. Patty's Day edition, recapping Tennessee baseball's series sweep over the Florida Gators in Knoxville in Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Tennessee looked the part and is now the consensus number one team in the nation across all five polls, was the number one team for the last 2 weeks, but took a couple of weeks to earn that number one spot from the D1 baseball rankings. They took that this week. LSU didn't lose, just what Tennessee did, being so impressive with a series sweep over then number 7 Florida was enough to catapult the Vols into the top spot. I got Ryan Chumbert here with me to break down the action that I saw a lot of this weekend. Ryan, a little bit limited as he was covering Tennessee basketball, of course, and its SEC tournament run to the SEC tournament championship, which a lot was going on there, in Selection Sunday, of course. So Ryan's been a busy man, but I imagine that you're ready to talk some baseball, take a little bit of a break from hoops, right, here on this Monday night.
Yeah, this will be one of few breaks from hoops this week, at least during waking hours. So, yeah, excited to get into it. I mean, broken record, but really impressive weekend from Tennessee baseball. And it was kind of funny. I mean, the games on Sunday, basketball and baseball started at the exact same time, with obviously Tennessee playing Florida in both sports. It would have been a bit, I don't know if ironic's the right word, but it would have been funny if Tennessee had lost one of the first two games in baseball. It would have been double rubber matches between Tennessee and Florida on Sunday, since the basketball team split the regular season meetings. But Tony Vitello and his squad had other ideas, earning a very impressive sweep to open up conference play.
Yeah, and, I think we each predicted Tennessee to lose one game for the weekend. I did across, a couple podcasts. I know you did in your preview. You didn't specify which game, but I remember us texting privately, and you were saying that you thought Friday night could be the one. That was Florida's best punch of the weekend. Sunday looked dicey there for a minute, but given, Florida's pitching struggles, I think you kind of felt Tennessee was going to be able to, kind of win that game down the stretch, just kind of weathered the storm there a bit in the middle parts and then was able to win. But Friday night was, I thought, Florida's best game of the weekend, best chance at a win looking back on it. A 5-3 win for Tennessee, though, followed by a 10-0 run rule win on Saturday, which featured a crazy 9-run inning in the 7th to run rule Florida, and then a 7-4 win on Sunday. We'll start with the pitching, as we always do, and I'll move to Friday, Ryan, to start us off. I know you caught a good bit of this game after the basketball game, just, following along. Liam Doyle gets the start, and let's start here. It's Tennessee's ace. His first SEC action in a Tennessee uniform. Lots of eyes were on his performance, and it was a weird Liam Doyle game. Like, the final line is really good, but when you look at 105 pitches and 4 2/3, it obviously featured just a ton of battles. Florida just did not go quietly in EAB, seemingly. I believe 5 at-bats against Liam Doyle went, or I should say plate appearances, went 7 or more pitches. So, or required Doyle to throw 7 or more pitches. You get what I'm saying. So,
Yep.
a lot of long battles between Doyle and Florida hitters really jacked that pitch count up pretty quickly. I said that was, probably the worry with any given Liam Doyle outing, given he's a strikeout guy. But I thought Liam Doyle did a good job to weather the storm from Florida and to, not let anything spiral. And he held them down pretty well. It's just that the outing was maybe shorter than normal.
It felt like a more dramatic version of the Oklahoma State start, where just a lot of really competitive at bats. And look, I think that's probably going to be the game plan for most teams against Doyle. Like, I don't think you're going to beat him, Liam Doyle, with your best punch. Like, you're not just going to be able to hit him around and hit him out of a lot of games. I think the strategy to beat him for a guy that is strikeout heavy is to just try to battle. And a guy that relies on his fastball, which obviously is a dominant pitch as much as he does, is to sit on that fastball and try to battle. And Florida did, I think, a good job of that. I don't think, to your point, like, I don't think, definitely shorter, but I don't think it's like way shorter than what I expect a lot of his SEC starts to be. I mean, he got 4 2/3. I would think like 6 innings would probably be the goal for most Liam Doyle starts. So some of it's just the nature of the beast, but again, he held down a really good Florida lineup. He looked dominant. Very little change, I guess, from what we saw from him in the non-conference play, particularly Oklahoma State, the best team he faced, to this Florida game. He still looks like a guy that's going to be a force and is going to give Tennessee a great chance to win on every Friday night.
Did give up a run. His second earned run given up this season was a solo homer. I can't quite recall who hit it to Florida, but it was an absolute bomb to left field. But like I said, not really any other big damage Florida was able to inflict against Doyle. It was a good outing, and I felt like poorly phrased a question to Hunter Inslee after the game, just how Doyle was able to just gut through the outing in a way, and he's like, I thought he did pretty dang good, and yes, he did. Like I think we've just grown so accustomed to Liam Doyle mowing through batters and just being overly dominant that when every AB is a bit of a struggle, it's a little bit of a surprise. But to Doyle's credit, all those ABs that were struggle, Doyle ended up winning most of them. It just took a while. And, I never want to emphasize, the calls in a game, or we don't need to get into officiating across covering any sport. But Doyle did get squeezed a bit on some ABs. There against Florida, specifically
The end of his
in
outing.
that fifth outing, yes, and
Yeah.
at the end. So there were some, definitely some questionable ball calls. Was 2 strikes against a couple of batters in that fifth inning, but yeah, a solid outing for Liam Doyle, and of course he hits the road at Bama this weekend against another tough lineup. But I don't think there's any reason to feel less excited about a Doyle season, or to be less confident about what Doyle can give Tennessee on Friday nights.
No, absolutely not. I think it was Blake Sire. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. That's
Sear.
the guy who hit the
Yeah, I
Sear
think it
hit
would be
the home
Sear.
run against him. But yeah, and I think almost one of the things that Tennessee has mowed past so many teams they've played this year, much like Liam Doyle. I think when I look at Friday's game and really the weekend as a whole, I think what's impressive about it is the ability to win when things don't go to script, I guess, and that's what happens when Liam Doyle exits. And it's been Liam Doyle to Tanner Franklin, and Tanner Franklin does not have a very good outing. So I'd be curious to see what you saw from him, and then just how impressive it was for Tennessee. I mean, that pitching plan has been pretty unflappable to this point.
Yeah.
And for Nate Snead to kind of pick them up and still hold a good Florida offense to 3 runs on a game where we're talking about it. A lot of the stuff with the pitching didn't go perfect.
Yeah, it was just weird from Tanner Franklin, specifically Friday. He gets a pop up after throwing 3 pitches to relieve Doyle, strands a runner. But then in the 6th, it's 4 straight singles without recording an out, and he's done. And Florida scores 2 runs on those 4 singles. So it was just bang, bang, bang. It was one after another, right? It was early in the ABs. And they weren't, just a ton of hard hit singles. It was just, he just was getting hit around, and it was really important for Tennessee to pull him as quick as possible. It felt right. Dylan Loy comes in, and he's been a bridge guy in multiple outings. Of course, he shoves on Sunday, but on Friday, a wild pitch advances runners, gives up a walk, and then his day is done. So he didn't look as sharp as he has. And then you mentioned Nate Snead just saves Tennessee. Like, he gets the save on the day, and it's just perfectly indicates what he did for Tennessee, because he saved the game, like, legitimately. Without Nate Snead, I don't think Tennessee wins this game. It felt like they had no other option but to go to Nate Snead and try to get the win on Friday night. And that's what happened. Everything looked so difficult for Doyle. I mentioned the final line is good. He, had a really good game, but everything looked so difficult, AB to AB. It obviously was difficult for Franklin, who let things spiral in the 6th, and then Lloyd just didn't have the best command. But it looked so easy for Nate Snead. It was just a complete 180 for Tennessee on the mound when he entered the game. Just shut down Florida there in those final 3 2/3. It was really impressive. I mean, he just was unfazed, and Florida could do nothing against him. And I think it's arguably, one of the better, the best maybe pitching performance we've seen from Tennessee individually in a game this season, given the stakes and the level of competition. But yeah, and then Sunday is able to come in and slam the door again in the final 2 innings and preserve a 3-run lead there against Florida, which he entered the game with a 1-run lead, actually. So yeah, Nate Snead, true MVP of Tennessee's pitching staff this weekend, along with Marcus Phillips. Just Snead in a little bit of a different way. And I think you saw exactly what Snead did last year, right? He's just this type of guy for Tennessee again, who can go multiple times in a weekend and is absolutely dynamite late in games.
Exactly. I mean, that's the value of him in the bullpen, and I think in some ways, and this weekend wasn't a perfect encapsulation of it, but he's not a guy that strikes out a ton of batters. So in a lot of ways, he's kind of the opposite of Doyle, and you can kind of you can get a lot of outs without throwing a ton of pitches, which is valuable when you're trying to use a guy twice in one weekend, especially like he did. And I mean, I know there was kind of the wacky double play that got him 2 outs on one pitch with the
Oh yeah.
ruling of the guy sliding over the base,
So
but for
yeah, no, I can expand on that. It was probably the biggest moment of Friday night, right? It's runners on. It's when he comes in for Loy. So there's a pair
runners
on.
on the corners.
Yep. No, it's actually bases loaded. Excuse me.
Okay.
Bases loaded, 1 out because a wild pitch advanced runners to second and third for Loy, and then he walked a guy to load the bases. So that's when Snead comes in, and it's a ground ball to second. I thought it could have been a normal 4-6-3 double play, but Keelan hesitates a bit. I think Keelan and Curley were, not really sure of who should get the ball. Keelan ends up getting it. He hesitates when he gets the ball, and then has to kind of sprint to the bag at second base to get the force out, and then goes to turn around and throw. He was never going to make the throw. They had too much time had elapsed, and the runner Landon Stripling was going to reach first in time, so he doesn't even get the throw off. But Luke Heyman's slide into the restricted zone. Cleat makes a touch of contact with Keelan's shin. Nothing too serious, but the slide was definitely illegal. Interference call leads to an inning double play and saves a run for Tennessee because Florida would have scored on the ground ball and tied the game. So it was arguably the biggest moment of the night. And yeah, got that to start his outing and then cruise from there on out. It was a total momentum shift because Florida was building. They had gotten to the bullpen, hit around Tanner Franklin. Well, he didn't have his best stuff. You could really feel it, the tide turning in the game. And once that happened, Snead just shut him down. So yeah, that's something I didn't mention. That was probably the biggest moment of Friday night's win.
And I think with, Snead, the fact that he got, trying to do some quick math, 10 outs. That quick math was wrong. 10 outs. And he threw 37 pitches. It's just like kind of crazy. And he struck out 4 guys. So it wasn't even, strictly to my point of him, just not striking guys out. Like he got a good bit of strikeouts, 40% of his outs, and obviously 2 more of them on a wacky double play. But for him to throw 37 pitches and get so many outs for Tennessee, but to limit his pitch count and be ready for Tennessee on Sunday to expand, because as everybody knows, most weekends, maybe not all weekends, maybe things when things go exactly according to script, this is not the case. But a lot of weekends in the SEC, man, any out you can get on Sunday is very valuable with where your pitching staff can be at.
Yeah.
So for Snead to be able to turn around and throw 2 innings on Sunday, like that was just super, super impressive. And I bet we'll see him in this 4 to 6 innings pitched in any given weekend relatively frequently, and that just shows how valuable he is, even though he's not one of Tennessee's weekend starters.
Yeah, and the stakes got a bit high again too on Sunday because they're in the ninth. It's a leadoff walk after a tough battle, a little single up the middle, and then just like that, the tying run's at the plate. Right, it's 3-run game with 2 on, no outs. Tying run at the plate. Wind honestly kind of saves a 3-run homer, and then Snead gets back-to-back Ks to end it. So the stakes got a bit high there in the top of the ninth too on Sunday, just like they were pretty much his entire outing on Friday. So just, can't say enough about him delivering in big moments time and time again. He's so incredibly valuable, and once again is going to be among the top MVPs for Tennessee's team.
For sure. And then to me, kind of moving it to Saturday, to me, the 2 big storylines watching from afar this weekend, one of them, what Marcus Phillips did on Saturday. I mean, I think it obviously been complimentary of how he threw in the non-conference play, but still a little bit hesitant to crown him or to just, he hadn't looked like Liam Doyle essentially. And for him to come out and what he did on Saturday against Florida was super impressive.
And because he honestly had the misfortune of not being able to show his improvements against a against a team like Arizona or Oklahoma State. It was
Yeah.
against Rice and Houston, who is, has great program history, but isn't good this year and
Well,
is
they
more
fired
like
their coach. They've already fired their coach and hired a replacement. So that shows where
that
their
should show
season's
you.
at.
It
Yeah.
was more like a midweek opponent, So Tennessee won the game by 10 runs. So
Yeah.
Marcus Phillips hadn't been tested. So he's still a little bit of a question mark. First SEC start, obviously didn't pitch a ton against SEC teams at all last year. And then, I mean, Snead thing, we know that Nate Snead could do that. It's nothing new. It is just affirming what we already know. That, there's some offensive things that you could say, but come on. The biggest story of the weekend is what Marcus Phillips did on Saturday. I mean, he was so shut down dominant, complete game shutout. 5 hits allowed, no runs, struck out 7, only walked 1, and it was against Florida's leadoff guy, Nadeau, who just a remarkably difficult out. Entering Sunday, he didn't have the best game 3, but entering Sunday, Florida's leadoff hitter, Justin Nadeau, had seen 57 of Tennessee's 204 pitches in the first 2 games. That's
That's insane.
21%.
That's
Unbelievable.
insane. Yeah.
Yes, every freaking at bat was 7 or more pitches, seemingly. Dude just
A
didn't
great
go
leadoff
away.
man right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's zero power, by the way, to his game. He's just all like working hell ABs and working walks and hitting singles. Like that's just what he does. Definitely the perfect leadoff guy. So that was the only person Marcus Phillips walked. Comes back out in the 7th after I thought his day was going to be over, and retires the side around a 2-out single again. And that single, he almost made an incredible defensive play. So yeah, he wins co-SEC pitcher of the week with Bama's guy, who they're going to see, who shoved on Sunday. So Marcus Phillips doing that gives everyone's got to be bought all in now. Like you have to be bought all the way in on Marcus Phillips being a legit difference-making SEC pitcher, given what he showed you in just this one game.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree. And it's not anything just crazy new or anything. But again, for him to be that dominant, and you just look at what Tennessee's pitching staff has, it's just like, wow, like it is really, really deep. It feels like, or if not really deep, like 5 or 6 just dominant guys. It feels like.
Well, and it kind of saved Tennessee in a way for this series because Franklin didn't have it on Friday. You had
Yeah.
to you didn't burn Snead all the way, but you used a lot of Snead, so you can't really expect a 3 to 5 inning relief appearance from Snead on a Sunday this early in a season. And then if Franklin doesn't have it, there's limited options. Honestly, Russell's still not playing, so there's limited options of who can give you any sort of extended relief outing. If it's not going to be Franklin, right? So what Phillips did, I think, saved Tennessee a little bit, set them up so much better for Sunday.
Yeah, no doubt. And then it's funny because to your point, it looked like he was going to be done after the 6th inning. He comes back out for the 7th inning. He's definitely done after that. And so Tennessee still got, at that point, it's a 1-0 game. They still got to find a way to get 6 outs. And it not only did the intensity of what those outs look like go away, you get the run rule. You don't even have to pitch those last 2 innings. Marcus Phillips gets one of the probably few times where you get a complete game shutout. And when you walk off the mound for the last time, you're thinking there's zero chance that was going to be a complete game shutout.
Yeah, it's literally a 1-run game. Yeah.
Yeah, a complete pitcher's duel to that point.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. That combination where Tennessee was kind of behind schedule a little bit on the pitching. I mean, that's maybe a little bit dramatic, but things have been thrown off a little bit. Was immediately and kind of flipped in Tennessee. Obviously, they don't have a set in stone Sunday starter right now, so it wasn't like it was automatically going to be easy for them with their Sunday pitching plan. But you had to feel a lot better after Marcus Phillips was the only guy that had to throw on Saturday.
Yep, no doubt about it. And like I said, he seems like he's going to be a dude for Tennessee. And, I don't know if there's going to be a specific stack or anything after Phillips, but if he can be a guy who can keep a pitch count lower and do types of outings like this, it's going to be really beneficial. And I compared it. This is going to sound crazy because they're totally different arms. And honestly, the expectations were higher for Phillips this season and going into this outing than it was early for Xander and SEC play, but it felt Xander-like in terms of how efficient it was and honestly the surprise factor a little bit, because when Xander did that against Georgia in game 3, and I think it was 6 innings at the time, set a career high in innings pitched, and Tennessee gets a series win in a rubber match for getting absolutely rocked on Friday, struggling on the mound Saturday, but winning a high scoring game. There was just zero confidence from pretty much everyone who covers the team going into that Sunday against Georgia last year because of the lack of pitching Tennessee had and how great Georgia had been offensively. And then I think Tennessee shut them out. It was like 7-0. Xander was
Yeah.
perfect in 6 innings, and Tennessee wins the series. That was kind of the first moment you knew, hey, maybe Xander can be this. And it was similar for Marcus. Like I said, different style, totally different pitchers. And I think the expectations were higher for Phillips, and there's less of a surprise factor, but it was similar.
Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. And I mean, just from, like you said, the efficiency, like it was longer. I don't think even when Xander was pitching fantastic down the stretch, he went 7 innings, much at least. But it was a very Xander Sechrist stat line or box score
Yeah.
from Marcus Phillips. So, yeah, to me, that was probably the top story of the weekend for the Vols.
And, moving to Sunday for Tennessee on the mound, the big story was Dylan Loy. But first, quickly, Tegan Kuhns gets the start. I know this is the game you saw the least amount of this weekend, Ryan. And I thought Tegan Kuhns looked the best he has all year. 2 2/3, only allowed 1 hit, went through the lineup just once, recorded 3 strikeouts. I asked Tony afterward if that was the plan for Kuhns to only go through the lineup once, as we know he hasn't been totally ramped up all the ways. He's 100% health wise, but they're just kind of easing him in given he was sick and missed the first handful of games of the season. But Tony said there was no specific plan. I was kind of surprised by that. It seemed pretty, concrete that Kuhns gets 2 outs there pretty quickly in the third, and then his day's just abruptly done as Nadeau comes back up to hit, and the lineup turns over. But that wasn't the case per Tony. And then Tennessee struggled on the mound after Kuhns left with Arvidsson and Franklin. But just touching on Kuhns specifically right here, I thought he looked really good. I would like to see more from Kuhns. I think all Tennessee fans would, a longer Tegan Kuhns outing potentially, and I think that could happen given what Kuhns showed the coaching staff in this Sunday appearance against Florida. And he feels like he's going to be the Sunday guy until Russell comes back in the fold, and even when he does, who knows? But right now, it feels like Kuhns is the most likely Sunday starter for Tennessee, and I think it would be really interesting to see what he can do with longer outings.
For sure. I mean, from battling the Wi-Fi at Bridgestone Arena while covering the basketball game, I did find some angry tweets of people watching baseball that Tegan Kuhns is getting pulled that early. So I was going to ask you about what Tony said because I hadn't got back and read the transcript. So that is interesting. And yeah, I mean, there's just opportunity there. Like, it doesn't feel like Brandon Arvidsson has, not that he's been bad, but he just hasn't pitched great right now or to this point in the season. So there's opportunity to be had, especially over the next handful of weeks, maybe up to a month before we see AJ Russell fully get back on the mound throwing again. And Kuhns feels like the guy that is furthest away right now from what he's giving Tennessee and what his ceiling is this season of what he can give Tennessee. And that's not
agree.
to say that he's pitching bad, but just from of how much he's done to this point, it feels like there's still a lot more there.
Yeah, I was just disappointed. Forget about the game itself. I just wanted to see Tegan Kuhns pitch more. And it was the same in Houston. He just, he had given up a couple of hits that were hard hit balls in the gaps, but his stuff is so good. The breaking ball is so good. He just looks in total control. Like you said, the upside is through the roof just from watching him pitch a handful of innings so far this season. I guess this was his longest outing of the season, 2 2/3. He only went 2, right, in Houston. So I guess
did he get 1 out in Houston in the third inning?
I thought they gave Arvidsson a clean inning. I can.
Yeah, you may be right. I'm pulling it up.
Yeah, 2 innings against Arizona. So yeah, 2 2/3 was his longest, and it was very short. So we still haven't seen Kuhns do, go have an elongated outing at all. But I think that's coming, and I think it's because of what he showed on Sunday. And even though Vitello said there was no specific plan, it really did seem like there was maybe not through the lineup once. It wasn't that specific, but I think the plan was around 3 innings or less for Kuhns. But before we celebrate as hashtag LoyBoys, the Dylan Loy outing, to wrap up our pitching talk, got to spend some more time on Tanner Franklin. You said Brandon Arvidsson, he's kind of been what he is, so far. Like, he's a bullpen guy who hasn't had a great outing yet, but hasn't been bad, like you said. But Tanner Franklin, we were excited about what he could potentially do this year. High expectations given what he showed as a stack to Liam Doyle on Friday nights early in the season. He worked around trouble pretty well in Houston against Oklahoma State, but really in the last couple of weeks and specifically this weekend just hasn't had it, and got a chance to redeem himself in a way on Sunday after Friday's poor outing. Comes in with a pair on, or I should say, this would be bases loaded with one out in the fourth inning. Brendan Arvidsson error and then a single that Dean nearly caught. It was ruled a single, but it wasn't an error. But Dean did get a glove on it, and then a one out walk on 4 pitches spelled the end for Arvidsson. So Franklin comes in, one out, bases loaded. First pitch of his outing is a double rope down the left field line. So that wasn't good. Then he plunks a guy, and then Reese Chapman drops a line drive in right field. Things spiral a bit for Tennessee, and it wasn't great for Tanner Franklin. There comes back, or doesn't come back out in the 5th, excuse me. So that was kind of it. He just kind of had to endure that 4 spot that ended up being it for Florida there in the 4th. But I think this is the biggest worry for Tennessee baseball right now. It is what Tanner Franklin has looked like out of the bullpen, and I don't think that it's the end of him or anything like that. Like, he's obviously very talented and could still become a really important pitcher for Tennessee out of the pen and a dude, but right now it's got to be a worry.
Yeah, I mean, to your point there, Tennessee doesn't have a ton of worries that they've shown to this point in the season. So, it's a low bar to be the biggest worry. But no, I mean, definitely not a productive weekend for him. And a guy that has been very effective and very productive in non-conference play. And a guy Tennessee's clearly banking on to get a lot of, outside of the bullpen for him in SEC play. So, a guy they need to get right, and will be interesting to see how he responds next week at Alabama.
All right. LoyBoys Rise Up. Dylan Loy on Sunday. What a freaking outing. His best of the season. 3 innings pitched, only 1 hit allowed. That could have been ruled an error on Andrew Fisher. Was initially, actually. It was changed pretty quickly thereafter, but it was initially actually ruled an error on Andrew Fisher, a hard hit ball to first base. But only 1 hit allowed, no runs. Struck out 5 in those 3 innings, walked none. Absolutely shut down dominant from Dylan Loy there in the 5th, 6th, and 7th innings in a very, very tight game against Florida when the offense was once again not doing much. They're just sparse offense, really, or I shouldn't say sparse. They were, it was just limited per inning. Tennessee wasn't just having big innings, right? It was just here and there. And Dylan Loy was the best battler, Tony Vitello said, for Tennessee on Sunday. So, Ryan, he did it. Hey, he's a surefire top of the bullpen arm for Tennessee, I think, is what he's shown so far.
Yeah, no, I hate that I missed it and I didn't get to watch any of it, because when I saw the stat line, I mean, just electric when I saw the stat line. I mean, that's all I can beaming as I walked down through the corridors of Bridgestone Arena. But yeah, I mean, look, I guess you would have to say his outing still in the SEC championship game against LSU is better, like, objectively probably, but this felt, it's just a different vibe. Obviously, Tennessee wanted to win the SEC tournament, but like, it was like Dylan Loy's kind of out of place pitching in this moment. Like, he's not going to be the guy in Tennessee's bullpen down the stretch. Now he might. What happened, in that outing when he was really good, he kind of earned a little bit more trust and he pitched a little bit more in the NCAA tournament than he did in the regular season. But where Loy is right now, trying to grab a big role in Tennessee's bullpen to do this in a Sunday rubber match, like, it was huge, and it was just super impressive. And kind of to my point earlier, you get 9 outs without getting rocked on a Sunday in SEC play. That's super valuable, and you do it giving up 2 base runners, I think is what it was. All the more impressive, and just a great outing and a great bounce back from what you said was a short but not a great outing for him on Friday night.
true or false, aside from Nate Snead, Dylan Loy is Tennessee's most important and, top, air quotes, top bullpen arm.
I would say most important, I would go Tanner Franklin over him too. But yeah, I mean it's those two as the 2 and 3 guys out of the bullpen right now. I would say, maybe Tegan Kuhns becomes that if AJ Russell or Tegan Kuhns become that, whoever's not a starter when Russell gets back on the mound. But right now, I think it's pretty clearly one of those two guys.
Well, it was just weird how Loy's season had gone so far because we had seen an outing of 4 more innings in an SEC championship appearance against LSU. Russell had started that game, so Loy was technically out of the bullpen, of course. So you knew he could do extended relief, but his role this season had been 2023 Kirby, what I had been comparing him to. Just a couple of batters, maybe an inning, a matchup go to in a specific situation. High leverage, sure, but never was having extended relief outings. And then Tennessee once again kind of out of options on a Sunday, given Arvidsson and Franklin's struggles. And in a very close game, you trust Dylan Loy. And with what he did in his first inning there in the 5th, you had to run it back a couple of more times, given that the fact he was shoving. And he never he just never was bad at all at any point in the outing. And I know it was longer, but I think he could have gone even longer, right? Like he could have come back out in the 8th. I think he even said so himself after the game. So I just think it was good. We saw some extended relief from Loy that I think we all knew he could obviously do and was capable of, given the fact he did it in Hoover last year, but just not yet this season.
Yeah, for sure. And he's probably going to be asked to do that more. Like I think Kirby's was kind of more year to year of what his role looked like, but last year you'd probably say it where there were times where he was coming in as a specialist for one out, and there were times like at Kentucky on Sunday where they just were out of options, and they're like, we're going to have to outscore Kentucky to win this game. Kirby, you're just going to go throw. If you give up home runs, who cares? Like, just go out there and get outs for us. So I think in that sense, like you see him, and you've been right to this point before Sunday. His role had been very 2023 Kirby-esque. I think it will end up looking more 2024 Kirby-esque, or maybe even 2021 Kirby-esque, where, yes, sometimes it's short outings, sometimes it's an out or two in a pinch and a tight game late. But there's also going to be times, more likely than not on Sundays, or maybe a Doyle or Phillips start goes poorly on Friday and Saturday, and they got to fill a lot more innings there, where Tennessee is going to say, all right, just go out there, compete, throw strikes, and we'll live where everything falls.
Yeah, and it's easy to say this given the fact it literally just happened, but there's innings to take with this Tennessee pitching staff if there's going to be struggles from guys you expected to have more success and to be able to eat more innings in a given weekend, like a Franklin and Arvidsson. But it feels like you can use Loy and Snead in 2 different roles, 2 separate times in the weekend. You can use Loy as elongated relief bridge to Snead, who can close, or you can use Loy as quick bridge to Snead, who can do long relief, right? I'm talking 3 or more innings. Whereas you could do Loy for 3 innings and then Snead 1, and then you could just swap them on a Sunday. I think they can both pitch twice in a given series. I think they both can do different things. Snead more valuable and is just, more versatile. But yeah, both of these guys I think are Tennessee's top bullpen arms right now, given what we just saw in the only SEC series of the season, which, to be quite frank, it is kind of what we have to base a lot of this off of, given the level of competition.
Definitely. You just kind of have to be, hesitant to draw too much. But you're right. Like, this is obviously, I think, the most important weekend of the season at this point, and what you're going to draw a lot of stuff away from. Question for you, and this is purely box score watching. I was surprised to see no Ryan Combs this weekend. What was your take on that? Did Tony talk about that at any point?
He didn't. Felt like there was a lot to ask Sunday, so just didn't get to it. But
Yeah.
he was actually hot late when I mentioned the tying run was at the plate. So when the
He
tying
was
run
the
was
next guy.
he was getting hot, and Breedlove was getting hot. So both of those guys were in the bullpen when that was happening again, when Snead was on the mound. But I think it was just, you probably would have seen him Saturday. Or no, I take that back actually, because Tony said when I asked him about Dylan Loy's outing Sunday, he said, well, thank Reese Chapman because Loy was ready to go in the game on Saturday night,
Interesting.
but Chapman walked it off. So I take back what I said. It was actually going to be Loy to relieve Phillips and potentially close out Saturday's game. In that case, you would have probably seen Combs as
Yeah.
Loy would have been burnt. So Combs felt like the next guy, just limited opportunities given what Tennessee had to ride Snead on Friday because of what he was doing. Tennessee had to ride Loy given what he was doing on Sunday. Both of those guys were pitching so well when things had not gone Tennessee's way for other arms that you kind of had to keep them there. And Saturday, there was only one, right? Marcus
Yeah.
pitched so
Yeah,
well,
that
and
makes
then
sense.
you run roll him. So it just kind of felt like there was no real place for Combs. I thought maybe he would have closed Sunday instead of Snead. But like I said, it was a one-run game actually when Nate entered. And I guess if he's ready to go, you're not going to not pitch Nate Snead with the game on the line if he's all right. You maybe don't extend him if it's a question mark and you have Combs who's super fresh, but only 37 pitches a couple nights ago, Snead was able to do it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it's a good point about the run rule because that obviously eliminates 2 innings that Tennessee had to fill. And so,
Yeah,
no, that makes complete sense. All right, you want to get over to the hitting, and I'll tell you my
let's do it.
second big takeaway from afar: the
Yeah, you can
freshman.
start with it.
The
Okay.
freshman. That was it. Like, I know it wasn't a great weekend for Levi Clark, but still had a big hit. I think that was in Saturday's game.
Lead
Was that
off.
all this? Yep.
Lead off
And
double,
then
yeah. He ended up scoring on.
Manny drove him in, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean Manny and Jay were both really good, and I think it wasn't that they necessarily did a ton of spectacular stuff, but it just looked like when I was watching and then a little bit of box score watching, just like very veteran type at bats. They both walked a bunch. They both made some plays in the field. Like, I don't know, they just not phased by the moment of the start of SEC play. And to me, that was really impressive watching from afar. They almost kind of, as well as Reese Chapman, who was fantastic and probably Tennessee's best bat over the course of the weekend, they kind of led the way at the plate for the Vols.
Yeah, and you look at how Tennessee scored its first runs of each game. Okay, so on Friday, Tennessee did nothing the first 2 innings. Jay Abernathy one out single, or I mean, sorry, that was Sunday. On Friday, excuse me, Tennessee did nothing the first inning, and then it was Manny Marin one out double. Later scores on a Jay Abernathy RBI single. So that's how Tennessee gets on the board. Marin, Jay. You go to Saturday, Tennessee did nothing the first inning, and honestly did nothing from 3 through 6. But in the second inning, it's a Levi Clark double and then a Manny single to drive him in. So freshman scoring first on Saturday. And then you move to Sunday, which was what I was getting to earlier. Tennessee does nothing first 2 frames. Third inning, it's a J one out single. Then he advances all the way to third on a Stone Lawless single, redshirt freshman,
Yeah.
and then a Dean Curley RBI ground out. But Jay's speed had actually got him to third. Most runners would not have been able to reach to third on Stone's single to left.
Oh, well.
It was really impressive what those guys were able to do. Just manufacturing these runs for Tennessee, getting them on the board first in all 3 games.
Yeah, it's, being able to take that initiative, or initiative is probably not the right word, but just from the jump to be ready to roll and making things happen. Like, and I don't mean this as a knock at Tennessee's veterans at all, but like, that's what you expect the veterans to do in these games, especially the first weekend of SEC play. And for the young players to do that, and at least on Friday and Saturday, man, Florida's pitching was really good. It wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't like they were facing shaky pitching or anything like that. Like, man, just blown away is maybe a little too dramatic, but really, really impressed with the way those guys handled the moment of the first big SEC series.
Yeah, Manny just feels so solid, and he's, really good defensively. He made a great play Sunday late for Tennessee at third, and he's just been so solid for Tennessee towards the bottom of the lineup. And then Jay, you saw the pair of defensive highlights. Um, there on
Yep.
Saturday. A great defensive day for Tennessee. I haven't talked about that yet, but my God, the defensive highlights for Tennessee were incredible all game long. But Jay, early on, two great Sports Center level highlights, gets a absolute rope from left field to home plate to get the third out of an inning, saves a run there, and then in the second does his best Hunter Inslee impression,
Yeah.
crashing into the wall, catching a fly ball. So back-to-back defensive highlights. Manny had one Sunday. Both of these guys, I feel like their best trait is honestly their defensive prowess. And for Jay, it's speed, but he's also a great defender, and Manny definitely. But as I just mentioned prior to this talking point, they're also sparking offense. So both to me should be mainstays in the lineup moving forward. I like them towards the bottom of the lineup right now. Maybe they move up later in the season, but right now they're creating so much balance with this Tennessee lineup.
Definitely. And, Jay, it's worth noting that, like, left field's not even in his position. He's a
Yeah, he's
middle
an infielder.
infielder.
Right.
Yeah. So, and a lot of it is as simple as the speed, but to be making fearless catches like that at the wall, I mean, I think that more than anything just speaks to his competitive character. Like, he doesn't play an outfield. He hasn't made catches like that in his in game career. He made one really nice one I remember watching in preseason practice. Not quite that dramatic, running into the wall, but uh, a little bit of a gamer, a little bit of the fearlessness, competitive character speaks highly to. And on the defensive note, and as you kind of looped it in there well with Stone Lawless as a redshirt freshman. Man, what a weekend for him defensively, and his growth has been really impressive. And it feels like both Cannon Peebles and Stone Lawless have gotten way better behind the plate. Probably Stone because he had more room to make up than Cannon, just how good he's gotten behind the plate. And in non-conference play, we talked about some. It felt like Tennessee had been really solid defensively, and definitely outside of a shaky inning there on Sunday, it feels like that's kind of been the case again in the first weekend of SEC play.
Yeah, I mean, they've each caught in 6 runners stealing this season. Stone had 3 in this series, 2 Saturday, 1 Sunday. And I think he also had a great barehanded play, by the way,
Yeah,
where he a grounder down the third baseline, barehands it, fires to first just in time for an out. Um, so I think Stone was rewarded Sunday start, given how great of a Saturday he had. And then, they kind of split Sunday's game. Cannon comes in halfway through, delivers Tennessee's big hit too, a
yeah.
crucial 2-run double to give Tennessee the lead there on Sunday. So yeah, both I don't Cannon's obviously not been great at the plate. He's has inconsistencies, but he showed you that he can still have a big moment any given time there on Sunday. And Stone's just been a really complete player for Tennessee. And I think Tennessee's in a good spot at the catcher position. And you could argue Cal Stark's back pick was amazing, and he was such a captain of that team and really the true quarterback. But throwing runners out at second specifically, I think Peebles and Lawless are honestly better, and it feels like Tennessee's going to be more effective in that area this season.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely, to this point, look, they have been. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think the thing I'd say about Cannon too, has a good note about him having a big hit in Sunday's game too. And he did the same thing in Arizona, or in the Arizona game in Texas, where both those weekends he had not had a lot of success at the plate, and then he provides a big swing in kind of
Mm-hmm.
the middle innings on Sunday. And yeah, I'm just not sure he would have done that last year. Like, it kind of felt like when things went poorly for Cannon last year, they spiraled a little bit. And I don't know, maybe that's reading too much into it, but it feels like he's done a better job of being able to flip the script, and even in weekends where he hasn't been great at the plate, still been really good defensively, really solid defensively, and then providing a really big swing in two at bats that drastically affected those two games, Florida on Sunday and then Arizona back a couple weeks ago.
No, that's fair. I mean, Tennessee desperately needed that cannon double there on in Sunday's game. It was just very important that Tennessee was able to get that to take the lead and just wrapping up this whole. Oh, by the way, yeah, in wrapping up this too, just notice this, but they're in the 6th inning prior to Cannon's 2-run double to give Tennessee the lead. Guess who was on base? Manny with a walk, Jay with a walk,
Yeah.
both 6 or more pitch ABs. what can like I said, they're spark plugs. They spark Tennessee. They've done it time and time again. They're not going to wow you with their power, but the defensive prowess, the speed, and the ability to spark offense or an inning, it has been great from those two. But just mentioning Levi Clark too, obviously his worst weekend of the year. I don't think there's any debate. Still started all three games, but got pinch hit for um, every game, I believe, pretty early in Friday and Sunday. Did have a big double on Saturday, but yeah, just wasn't his best weekend. Felt like he was swinging a bit too hard, going for too many pitches. And I don't know why Tony pinch hit for him so early. I didn't get the chance to ask him in those games. It didn't feel significant to the grand scheme of things
Yeah,
after these games, right? You know how it is, Ryan. But
for sure.
um, I just thought that was interesting. Maybe it's something we see at Bama, but I still think Levi Clark is among Tennessee's better bats and is a key part of this offense. But I just thought it was weird that Tony was so quick to pull the plug on just because the matchup was better with Bargo, who's a left-handed bat. Like he was so quick to pull the plug on Clark those 2 days when offense honestly wasn't being all that great for Tennessee, and Clark's been one of the better bats.
I'd theorize it's just his trust in Bargo, and obviously there's a little bit of an odd man out dynamic with Tennessee's lineup right now, and just trying to get him opportunities. That would be my theory. And he's just kind of making some quick reads. It'll
Yeah.
be curious to see, to your point, what it looks like this weekend in Alabama, and what it looks like as a whole. If they do that a lot with whoever the odd man out is, and if it's predominantly Levi, or is it's a lot more just kind of the hot hand. And obviously you can do that with Barco's versatility.
Well, I think it would be predominantly Levi because of what Manny and Jay give you defensively and what they've been doing at the plate. Like
Yeah.
it just feels like the more like most likely pinch hit spot would be DH. It's hard. It's easy to say that though. Everything's so much recency bias baked because Clark's been so good. How could we have said this a week ago? But yeah, like I said, I think if you ask Tony why he did it, he'd just say matchups, and he kind of mentioned it as a footnote of one of his comments Friday. That's why he did it. But yeah, it's just a trend that maybe could continue, but I don't know if it will. I still have a ton of confidence and expectations for Levi Clark this season. Just wrapping up some offense stats, takeaways before we get out of here. Reese Chapman, 2 huge swings, walks off the Saturday game, and then on Sunday hits a homer as well. He's providing Tennessee with a lot of power, some insurance runs there on that Sunday with the 2-run homer in the 8th to go up 3. And like I said, walked off the Saturday game. So led Tennessee in average on the weekend. Keelan gets a one to go over the fence. Had been a minute. Improves his homer count to 9. Hunter Inslee had a couple of solid hits. Dean Curley, this is the one I wanted to emphasize because the line for his series wasn't great, but it felt like coming into this series specifically, we hadn't had a huge Dean Curley moment. All this talk about the freshman, and we're still talking about it. It's such a great development for Tennessee. But Levi Clark, Andrew Fisher, the freshman, Gavin Keelan's power streak, all this other stuff that Dean Curley just kind of went to the wayside. But he'd been so consistent. It's like 300 every weekend from Curley, it seemed like, and I think the stats would bear that out. But he finally had a pretty big moment here in this weekend, and I think it can really be looked over given the fact that Tennessee wound up scoring 9 runs in the inning and run ruling Florida. But at the time, there was so much going into this at bat for Tennessee, who had done nothing against Aiden King. Florida finally goes to the bullpen in the 7th. Tennessee loads the bases. There's 1 out for Dean Curley. Super long AB, 9 pitch AB, and ropes a double down the left field line to clear the bases. So a massive moment for Curley. He hasn't quite had that yet this year, but he had it on Saturday, and I think it will be easily forgotten given the fact Tennessee ended up scoring freaking 6 more runs in the inning to run rule Florida. But I wanted to give that moment its due.
Yeah, we would have been really remiss not to talk about that. And all right, I'll give on that at bat and in that inning a little look behind the curtain. So I'm sitting there in the bowels of Bridgestone Arena working on basketball stuff. sitting by Rick Butler, and we're watching the game on Rick's phone between us. But I also have Stat Broadcast pulled up for the baseball game as well on my laptop. And on Stat Broadcast on the tab, it says the score and the inning. So it's a big thing. Like if I'm covering a game remotely, I will always take it and put it on like the tab and take it to a new window. So I can't see it. So I don't have a head start. But in this case, I wasn't fiddling with it. So I had it up and I kind of kept on looking at it as I was watching. I was trying to, since I wasn't fully occupied on watching the game, I was trying to, like, if something happens here, let's get a heads up. So I'm watching it. That Dean Curley at bat was so long and so competitive. I was like, all right, Dean probably got out here. Yeah, I was like, all right, Dean, not as down. I was like, Dean probably just got out here because I could see the inning and the score, but I couldn't see how many outs there were. So I was just like, oh yeah, Dean probably got out. And then finally saw obviously the 3 more runs, so knew bases clearing double or triple, and then watched it. So yeah, that was pretty incredible. Also shout out the Superman to reveal the Free Asuna shirt. That was pretty electric. And in that inning as a whole, like, there were pitching changes. It was a long inning. I knew Tennessee was still hitting. Like I knew that Florida hadn't gotten out of it, but I guess it was like 7-0 at that point before the Chapman home run, because I saw the Chapman home run right when it happened. But it was like a little bit before that, and it was like I knew the inning was still going on, but when Curley hit that, there was 1 out. And there was a moment where I was like, holy crap, there's still 1 out. Florida still hasn't gotten another out this inning. And it felt like 20 minutes had passed because this is over dramatic. This isn't quite the case. But when Dean hit that double, I was like, all right, Tennessee's up 4-0 in 7th inning. They're probably going to win this game. Like, all right, good for Tennessee. They got to finish it, but they're probably going to win. I'm still kind of watching, but I'm not quite as glued in. And then, I keep on seeing this score, and then 7-0. And I think it might have been when they came back from a pitching change or something like that. And I saw it still win. I was like, holy crap. And it felt like a midweek game. Tennessee made a very slender lead. They turned it into a run rule victory, and they did it with, scored all 9 runs without Florida recording its second out of the inning.
Yeah, I was about to say they didn't even record another out. It was walk, pitching change, RBI single, wild pitch, pitching change, 2-run single, double, homer, 3 runs. And Patrick Brown, who covered baseball, this is just funny little story, covered baseball for 247 this past weekend. I honestly didn't tell this to anyone, but I felt it before Fisher's hit. I was like, man, run rul's not that far away. And then Fisher hits a 2-run single. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we are just a couple of swings away. I turned to Pat Brown. Kaner actually wasn't there, so it was really just he and I in this area. And I was like, dude, we are 2 swings away from this game being over. So I would get ready because we've seen it so many times that these games just end. And what do you know? Dalton Bargo double, Reese Chapman 3-run. Thanks for coming. See you, bye, homer. And the game's over. It was crazy. And this has happened so, like I said, the Manny Marin Grand Slam, unreal.
And to the point, I think we talked about it last week. Tennessee, they never do it with a clinching the run rule with a single. It's always a home run. It's always an emphatic home run.
Yeah, and it maximized too here because they needed everything. They needed Chapman too, like to win. They needed all 3 runs.
Yep.
Absurd, but yeah, Tennessee series sweep over Florida. I know we got to get out of here, but a dominant weekend, and ETSU a tough midweek opponent on Tuesday before traveling to Alabama to play a Thursday through Saturday series this weekend. Usually you see those later in the season. Not this time around. It's a Thursday through Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Fun fact of the pod. March 17th is the date. Today marks exactly 1 calendar year since Tennessee last lost an SEC series, and you know where that was? In Tuscaloosa. Yep. Tennessee has not lost an SEC series since then, and we'll look to keep that going. The 20-0 Vols, of course, it's the best start in program history. If you go back to last year, they're on a 22-game win streak. The longest winning streak in program history is 23 games. I don't know if we're going to count it if they win Tuesday and Friday as breaking that because it has to go back to last year. I don't know how that's going to work. Maybe it does. But if you're going to include just in 1 year, they would break it if they sweep Bama. They would also tie Texas A&M for the best start by an SEC team ever at 24-0 if they were to beat it ETSU and then sweep Alabama. So just some things to look out for here, Ryan. And what do you say we get out of here?
Yeah, let's do it. That's all I got.
All right. Tennessee back in action, 5 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, as I said, against ETSU. That's Ryan. You can follow him at rshump00 on social media. I'm at Jack Foster Media if you want to give me a follow as well. And of course, follow at Rocky Top Insider on all social platforms and stay up to date for Tennessee baseball coverage and all your Tennessee athletics coverage needs over at RockyTopInsider.com. But for Ryan, I'm Jack. We'll see you next time on the Rocky Top Insider Diamond Pass.